Hi there, my name's Anna and welcome back to my art channel. So in today's video I am working on wood for the very first time, and this slab of wood was actually part of a Christmas present. It was the base of the present basically, and the present itself was on top and was kind of wrapped all nicely. And yeah, I just thought I'd keep it up and I could maybe use it for this purpose someday. And yeah, that's what I did. I covered it in white gesso, but yeah, I put several layers on it. I did not, however, sand it down, and it was also not meant for the purpose. So it did not have a very smooth surface, and I didn't even try sanding it down because I was too lazy. So that's probably not the proper way of going about painting on wood. I'd say normally speaking you'd want a smoother surface to begin with, and then you'd put your white gesso on top and you'd probably sand it down in between. I did not do that. That kind of thing, I hate sanding things down. I just usually skip that step if I can, and it doesn't normally make life easier. You're not saving time, but that's what I did. And also I sketched out this little fox freehand right onto my surface, which was also maybe not the best way of going about things. It's better to sketch it out on a separate piece of paper, and once you've got your drawing correct, then you can transfer it using transfer paper onto your surface. And you could also, as I am using acrylic paint here, you could paint in your background first and then transfer your drawing on top, possibly even using white transfer paper, which I don't actually own. That might have made things easier, but again, that seemed like too much preparation work and I was too lazy to do it. And yeah, like I said, being lazy doesn't necessarily mean you're saving time in the end, but you know, once you do your thing and you actually do your drawing, then that's fine. And it turned out nice in the end in any case, even though I did have some difficulties with the painting since the surface wasn't very smooth, and I actually had a very uneven part of the wood right on the left eye of the fox, which was a bit unfortunate. It made things a bit difficult for me, but yeah, I persevered and I finished this drawing, and yeah, it wasn't the easiest thing I ever did. I went through some ugly stages, possibly also because I'm used to watercolor painting, and I find with watercolor painting you don't really have those ugly stages as much, but in media where you do a lot of layering, you do that with watercolor too. But in any case, I went through some ugly stages with this fox, but I persevered and I continued, and it turned out very cute, I think. I think the main thing really with acrylic paint is that your drawing, your initial drawing is correct, or mostly correct, and it wouldn't be perfectly exactly like the original, but it's close enough. And that's the main thing in this case. You can see it's a fox, you can see it's a young little fox that is kind of looking down at you because the camera angle is so low. Yeah, what was I saying? With acrylic paint, you just have to kind of have the patience to continue until it turns out the way you want it to, because you can layer endlessly and you can definitely achieve the result that you want, given that your initial sketch is correct. You could, of course, change your outlines as you're going, but that is not easy. So once you've got your initial sketch the right way, you can definitely achieve whatever you want. You just have to have the patience to continue and to keep layering, and yeah, to get it to the stage that you like. I've already blocked in the background here. You can see it's an out of focus forest, and I'm going to add some layers on top. The green paint that I used, it's a sap green, is typically very translucent, so you do need a few layers to get a good coverage. And I'm using a lot of black in this painting as well. When I'm using acrylic paint, I tend to use more black than with watercolor, for instance. You can of course mix dark colors, but it's easier to do that with watercolor for some reason, and it's much faster if you just use your ready-made black. And since you're doing a lot of layering, I don't find that to be a problem here. I'm also using some yellow ochre, for example now on the nose and the eyes, I'm using burnt sienna, and I'm also using orange and red because obviously it's a fox. It has yellowy, orangish and reddish brown colors. And I'm using, for the background, I'm using a relatively large brush, but in between I'm also using a very fine brush for the little hairs on the fox. Here I'm going in with another layer on the background, and I'm just blending the colors into each other a little bit to get a bit of an out of focus background. As long as the paint is wet, you can blend it into each other, and since acrylic paint dries very quickly, you just have to be slightly fast when you're doing that. And as it does dry quickly, it's a perfect medium for a lot of layering, and it stays put, not like watercolor, you can't relift it. And it's slightly translucent, so by building up those layers, you kind of build a lot of dimension as well. For the ground the fox is standing on, I'm doing a fairly greyish brown mixture. It's just this kind of pebbly path he's standing on. By the way, in this case, I actually remember where I got my reference photo from. It's from Unsplash, and I currently have the link stored, so if I think of it, I will link it below so you can follow along with this painting. Yeah, as you can see, I've used a lot of black on the legs of the fox, on the tips of his ears, inside his ears and the tail. And he's lightest on the areas where the light is hitting him, on the back of his back and his leg. So I'm using a lot of white in those areas, and otherwise I'm using a lot of a brownish red. You can see some of my mixing process here on the right, but since it's sped up so much, you probably can't see a lot, but really you just have to follow your reference photo. And if you have some burnt sienna or some other type of brown, some yellow ochre, and some yellow and red, which I mean you normally have if you have a few paint tubes, and obviously some white, then you'll be able to paint this fox perfectly, I'd say. So I've added in the pupils of the eyes now, which is an important point in the drawing process. It's the animals always can look very creepy as long as they don't have their pupils yet, or humans as well, of course. So he's starting to look a bit more like something. And now I just have to add in a lot of detail and little lines of fur in his face. And in this reference photo, you're very close up to the fox, so, and well, it's a very furry one, maybe. You can see a lot of little fur strands in his face. The hair on the nose of the fox is a lot shorter, so I didn't use a lot of individual strands there. But around his eyes and his forehead especially, there's longer hair. And here I'm using a very fine brush. I bought this one recently because I'd run out of brushes that I can use for acrylic painting, because I needed a synthetic brush that can hold a fine point, and it's very small. This is a size 0 and it's from Da Vinci Nova Synthetics, it's called. It's actually still too soft for my liking, so it's probably better suited for gouache or watercolor. But it did the job okay. I just had to fight the surface, and it was a bit difficult with the soft brush. In some more orangish fur to the legs because they're not entirely black, and just blending it into the black a little bit, and a lot more detail on the face. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, do remember to give me a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel. Yeah, basically I'm just continuing to build up the fur and the detail, and I'm moving around the face of the fox, which is basically the area that needs the most work at this point. Everything else is further away and more out of focus, so I don't need as much detail. and it was easier to just block the paint in those other areas. And the more fur I'm adding in, the more character he starts to have. And I'm using a lot of different color mixes, using the colors that I've described to you before, just different tones of orange, of brown, yellow and black. And just basically following my reference photo. And the lovely thing with acrylic paint is that it's no problem at all to work from light to dark and from dark to light. It is, I think, a lot easier than watercolor. You don't have to plan as much in advance, which is great. And you can layer endlessly. The only disadvantage, of course, is that it seems like more of a hassle to get out all of those paints, to clean your brushes afterwards. But it is one of the nicest mediums to work in. So this was it for this painting. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, bye bye!